Hey guys, my name's Ned. This little guy right here is Jai, and today we're going to be talking about visual calculations and how you can use them to do dynamic highlighting just like this. Now, this might just look like fancy formatting, but let me tell you, there's real business value here. Let me play out a scenario for you. Let's just say that you work for an apparel company like Nike or Adidas, and the graph that we're showing here is the full year sales of a particular model of shoe. Now, you're a business leader, and this just happens to be your favorite report. In fact, you use it all the time. But the point that you're trying to make in that particular meeting isn't about the full fiscal year of sales. It's rather about a specific event. Maybe it was a really good one. Maybe we landed a huge account and had a huge sale. What you can do is you can use this feature to highlight that specific event in the context of the full year graph. And lucky for us, building with visual calculations is actually really simple. And that's what I'm going to show you how to do right now. But first, before I do that, if you're enjoying this video so far, please consider subscribing and giving it a like. All right, let's jump into the computer. So here we are in that exact same Power BI file that I was just showing you in the corner of the screen. And as you can see, it actually takes two tables. It takes a calculated date table, and then it has a data table right here that if we switch on over, is also just the short date and then the value in the graph. Then this right here is actually a bar graph, and I'll talk to you about why it's a bar graph and not an area graph in just a second. But moving on, we have a slicer, and the slicer just has the date from the date table. Really simple with two measures. It has a max and a min, so it's getting the min, which is the start date, and the max, which is the end date. And then if we go back and we look at these two tables, you'll see that they have no relationship. Now, before we move on to the line graph, I want to talk to you about visual calculations. And I want you to remember one very specific thing about them. They only have the data that's contained within the visual. They don't understand the broader context of the data model. If there's not a field in the visual, if there's not a table reference in the visual, they don't know that it exists, which is about to make what I'm about to show you make a ton more sense. All right. Okay. So going back then, let's click in to the Visual Calc editor so we can see what's going on with this data model. So as you can see, we have the date in the x-axis and we have the value that we're bringing on over, but then we've actually brought in quite a few other kind of characters, right? So one of the things with this kind of graph, right, is that when you're dragging it in with Power BI, it wants the value that you're dragging in to be related unless you bring it into the tooltips. So that's kind of a secret hack as to how I'm bringing in data from this data table right here without there being a relationship between the two tables. So I've dragged it over into the tooltips. And so I'm bringing in my min date measure and I'm bringing in my max date measure. And then I am hiding them so they're not shown in the visual. Then I've actually done the visual calc, which is just a simple if statement. If date between min and max, then return this color. Then that's pretty much it. So the min is going to return what's on the bottom end of my slicer, so that start date, and the max is going to return the max end, and then it's just an if statement. One quick call out, and this is something that actually got me. I actually thought visual calculations was broken. When you are using a visual calc in conditional formatting, in particular with a hex color, you actually have to go over into this property section, then go down to data format, then select the highlight color or the color that you want to use, and you have to change it to text. Otherwise, you won't be able to reference it when you're using conditional formatting. And that's what I'm using if we search for color up here. When we go all the way down, that is what I am using to dictate the bar color, which is why this is a bar graph. And at this point, you might be wondering, well, why did he use a bar graph instead of a line graph or an area chart? And that simply has to do with the availability of the conditional formatting. You can't use conditional formatting in an area graph. That said, there are a few kind of tips and tricks, which is if you first set the conditional formatting using the bar graph and then you switch it into an area graph or a line graph, it will still recognize the conditional formatting. Let me show you how that works. Sometimes it works sometimes it works really well. So we'll see what we get. But this is kind of one of those unofficial Power BI hacks. So here we are back in Microsoft Power BI. And just for those of you who don't believe me, let's go and let's switch this into a line chart. And oh, you can see right there, it picked up on our color. But then let's go down to color and let's find the line section. And what you'll see, if I could ever actually find it, let's search for a line. Bum, bum, bum. You'll see is that the line color here is actually set to blue and it doesn't have an FX. But if you notice, it picked up on the conditional formatting from the bar chart. So when I move it, it's still moving on the line. The same should be true of the area chart, I believe. And nope, it aired out there. So that's one of the flaws here with this kind of visual, right? Is it doesn't always work, especially when you're doing something kind of hacky like this that isn't supported by Microsoft. So, with all that said, I hope that you enjoyed this video. These kinds of videos are a ton of fun for me to make, especially because what I tend to actually do most of the main channel videos about are kind of larger projects. And when I'm needing a break from kind of one of those larger projects, I go and I make kind of a fun, like, hey, can we play with the visual and make it do a cool thing, which doesn't really make that much sense. But anyway, if you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing and giving it a like. We're currently on our way to 3,000 subs, and we have a goal of 5,000 subs. So I really appreciate your time watching this, and I hope you have a good night. Thanks for watching.